Mm. When Christ rejected or told us that we don't need to do any more sacrifices, or the teachings is teaching us not to um, conduct in sacrificial rituals or sacrifices, and that Christ was the perfect sacrifice, and that his sacrifice amended all sins, um, washed away all sins, etc. He was the perfect sacrifice. I have had to ask myself, is it really to empower us, or is it to disempower certain groups of people, certain um, individuals who utilize magic rituals with the blood, or sacrificial um, blood from animals or humans or whatever, or from themselves. And I was reading through Hebrews 11, 9, 11, 9, 11. Christ has already come as the high priest of the good things that are already here. The tent in which he serves is greater and more perfect. It is not a tent made by human hands. That is, it is not a part of this created world. When Christ went through the tent and entered once and for all into the most holy place, he did not take the blood of goats and bulls to offer as a sacrifice. Rather, he took his own blood and obtained eternal salvation for us. The blood of goats and bulls, as the ashes of a burnt calf, are sprinkled on the people who are ritually unclean, and this purifies them by taking away their ritual impurity. Since this is true, how much more is accomplished by the blood of Christ? Through the eternal Spirit, he offered himself as perfect sacrifice to God. His blood will purify our conscience from useless rituals so that we may serve the living God. So, it's just crazy how this stuff operates. How from sacrificing animals for God, or for impurity, be cleansed of impurity, to relying on one man, his sacrifice to cleanse the blood is supposed to be forever. But then you still, somehow it hasn't cleansed the people from their desires, even when he said become a new creature. So it's baffling how these gods, or being a God in Christ, is supposed to be against sin and transgression and evil, but the sacrifice haven't, or maybe the preachers or pastors haven't preached it right, to where we could be of sin, away from sin altogether. So he said, they're saying Christ, he sacrifice takes away sins, but you keep birthing people into sin. So I will hope that that sacrifice would have cleansed them of the desire to procreate, or the desire of the flesh to consummate. So I'm saying, like, use the blood of Christ, plead the blood of Christ to deactivate their procreation, to go extinct, to permanent salvation. Even right here it says eternal salvation, same thing, permanent salvation. So that's what I'm rooting for. So we won't have to suffer, or anyone have to suffer anymore. So I'm assuming that's what Christ was standing for and stood for. Whether he was a willing vessel for the sacrifice, still was done. His blood was spilled. Somebody's blood was spilled. They even have stories circulate different variations. Somebody else being sacrificed, but whatever. Either way, a sacrifice was done, so we won't have to sacrifice anymore. Now, some people take it as it's disempowering, and they don't want to lose their control and rely on Christ or one deity or being for their blessings. So they want to take it upon themselves, and they want to keep on doing their own individual sacrifices to manifest what they wanted in this 3D realm, this fleshly realm. And with my concern and observation with people going to church and etc., you praising and you doing all this stuff, and you're not getting your prayers answered, or are your needs being met? Some people don't say that it hasn't. I can only imagine someone who's homeless and famine, or severe poverty, call themselves worshiping God and Christ daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and still haven't got out of the rut they were in. So that is concerning when you talk about sacrificing or not sacrificing, not conducting yourself in rituals, blood rituals, because others are observing that this so-called God hasn't reached down and helped them, and they're in dire need, and they're still severely starving children, men and women in the world. So with that being said, and all the observation of people who are being, who are in these bad situations, who are being sacrificed, literally or metaphorically or spiritually, birthing others into famine and poverty. As I said, when you birth others into famine and poverty, and even the working class, in some cases, they're unknowingly birthing sacrificial beacons and children. You're being sacrificed, they're being sacrificed, or you're being harvested, your energy being harvested by these unseen and seen beings. It's a hot mess. And then they use you to help manifest to go against one or the other. I think both of them are doing blood rituals. The ones who's condemning ones for doing blood rituals and sacrificing towards their idols and pagans and all these different gods, it wouldn't be surprising if they're doing it as well. And that's why I make up songs like "Free Us from the Game," because they're trying to pit you against one another to take over. But which one of you actually trying to end the lies? Which one of you actually trying to help humanity to transition to the permanent escape, salvation, truth at this point? So who is actually resonating the goodwill of mankind? To at least, if you want to be pro-life, at least make it to where it's a prospering life for all, if that's even possible at this point, because we've been doing this 2,000 years after Christ, and the human race, and it's still issues. You're still dealing with wrestling and hierarchies, unjust injustices, and the many that are less fortunate and the few that have more. So it's like, shit. Who can tell anyone they can't or can't at this point, because we've been trying. So we're trying to level things out, equal playing field for everyone, and just still having these same fights that they had when Christ was supposedly alive. So it's, man, just deactivate procreation. That's all I'm saying. Like I said, extinction is the answer. I just need to just stop.